People gather at local council meetings and around large government buildings all around the country, protesting. They are fighting against cold shoulders and ignorance, desperate to stoke a fire from an ember. The call has been ringing for decades. Their cries aren't being heard. This is not the description of a dystopian movie trailer, it is the education field's reality. Hi, my name is Jonah PK. I use its pronouns, and today I'll be talking about gender pay gaps experienced by public school teachers. This is a large topic to cover, so we'll just be focusing on the following points: how women are affected by gender pay gaps, repercussions of a continued wage gap, and how the gap can be repaired. Let's start with our first point: how women are affected by gender pay gaps. Many today think we are all on equal ground, that things like the color of our skin or our gender identity do not play major roles in the job market. They are sorely mistaken. The facts are in Louis Friedberg of EdSource reports, telling us that these unequal pay issues have been a problem in the field since 1979. At the time, male teachers to their comparable graduates had a gap or wage penalty of about 7%. If you think that sounds bad, reports in 2018 raised that number to 21.4%. And while women started out fine in their positions, things only got worse over time. Center of America, or CAP, tells us that white women are earning 79 cents to a comparable man's dollar. Then, the National Education Association shows us how yearly teacher salaries stay at an average of just $60,000. While the benefits some gain from the position, like health insurance, retirement, or dental, can lessen the blow, it does nothing to help put food into stomachs and roofs over heads. The California Teachers Association, or the CTA, reports that they are still fighting with their districts to raise wages to a livable level. It has left them to choose between necessities and develop a slowly growing resentment. For POC women, it becomes even worse. As this is an intersecting problem, ethnicity, race, and gender discrimination, Black, Asian, and Hispanic women all fare worse than white, non-Hispanic women at various levels, CAP, or Center of America, reports. They say that Black women often find themselves in service jobs or domestic care fields that already have poor wages because they have always been women-led or seen as women's jobs. Their gap averages at 65 cents to a man's dollar, compared to a white woman's 79 cents. When we look at Asian women's wage numbers, we see false hope, as 98 cents or $1.01 to a comparable man's dollar does not factor in subpopulations. The lowest pay in this true range is held by Vietnamese, Hawaiian, Samoan, and many other AAPI women at 60 to 50 cents to a comparable white non-Hispanic man's dollar. The upper half of the more general Indian, Malaysian, and Chinese women's numbers stand at $1.21 to a white non-Hispanic man's dollar. A quote from CAP tells us that this variation in the wage gap is due in part to occupational segregation, with various Asian subcultures concentrated in low-wage occupations and others in high-wage occupations, which is itself driven by differences in culture, immigration patterns, and generational wealth, as well as intersecting gender, racial, and ethnic biases. Hispanic women are earning 57 cents for every dollar earned by white non-Hispanic men. Anyone with a multiracial background tends to be even worse off. All of this leads to the same problems: poor job options, debt, and unlivable wages. The education field does nothing to help these individuals, another factor into why teaching is losing air so quickly. So all of these statistics are startling, but what does that mean when we take a step back? What does this mean for teachers? It's time to talk about the repercussions of a continued wage gap. While in the last couple of years teachers have seen an increase in pay, the pandemic and inflation has caused a major setback. Even with salaries now $10,000 higher, inflation has crushed its effects, making the increase just 0.1% of what once was. The National Education Association tells us. Teachers who aren't paid well leave. We saw this in the walkouts and strikes happening all over the country during the Red for Ed movement. When they quit, new teachers must be hired. Rotating teachers like this is bad for everyone. As a tutor in a middle school, I see the repercussions every school day. We start losing connection with students. Behavioral problems increase as the mentors they look up to vanish. Constantly seeing important figures swapped out leaves them lost and upset. Teachers become restless. Some even start having their own behavioral problems. Their teaching skills subpar or non-existent. Teachers suffer under their hands. Harsh punishments in classroom and unsupportive adults surround them. People start to warn others not to tread into the career, and quickly the positions become harder to fill. The teachers that stay may end up working multiple jobs to stay afloat, reach out for government assistance, and are unable to live happy, fulfilling lives. With no way to save money and no parental leave, raising a family becomes less and less likely for them. From here, it becomes clear why this is such a big deal, why it can't continue. So, how can gender pay be repaired? Eunice Hahn tells us that stopping this tragedy from raising on starts with unions. While it is always important to fight for what you believe as a single person, voicing your disdain, there is power in numbers. Unions fight for the rights and pay of teachers together as a force that is harder to ignore, stirring up more chatter and upset on a wider scale. It also bands teachers together, making them less likely to leave or quit the education field. It will also fall to the government to do right by its people, the only people that can enact legislation to permanently stop this injustice. Center of America tells us that passing things like the Paycheck Fairness Act and relaunching the White House Equal Pay Task Force on a federal level will flesh out existing protections and ensure employees can speak freely about their pay. Enacting laws on a local level keeps this net of legislation more ironclad, setting up as much protection as possible for a fair market. Without this type of action, we will not see an end to this problem in our lifetime or our children's lifetime. The time for change is now, and it's up to us to make sure our leaders follow through. Today, we have talked about how women are affected by gender pay gaps, repercussions of a continued gap, and how the gap can be repaired. The pitchforks have been lit for some time now, and the demand for change will not stop. Our teachers are not being paid fairly, with women and POC teachers having an even harder time. Our children will continue to get poor and poorer education as it continues, with those who teach falling into the gap. The time for asking was far too long ago. Now we demand. My resources for this speech were Bluis R., Fry J., and Catter R. 2021, November 17th, Women of Color and the Wage Gap. Bradford D., 2021, February 16th, A Rolling National Teacher Strike is Why Schools Are Closed. CTA 2021, July 1st, You Can't Put Teachers First If You Put Educators Last. Friedberg L., 2019, May 1st, Wage Gap Between Teachers and Other College Graduates Exacerbates Teacher Shortages. Han E., 2021, April 29th, Teacher Unions Reduce Gender Pay Gap Among U.S. Public School Teachers. Work in progress. PKJ, Self-Experience. Thank you for your time.